Well, I call these two, they're clean energy prophets. There's two kinds of prophets. Those that talk about gloom and doom and warn of damnation and destruction, and those that create a positive vision. And I was just recalling going to visit Senator Jim Inhofe. He was there. We were so shocked. We actually got to talk to him, and I was so nervous, and I couldn't even remember what I said, but one of the things I said to him was like, we've got to stop blocking the blessings. And that came from who was it? All right, y'all. It was Patti LaBelle song. Don't block the blessings. Good things will come to you. And afterwards I go, did I really say that? But that's how I feel. I mean, we've got all these resources and we're blocking the blessings that are freely given to us. I mean, that slide with the big solar, ball compared to all the little tiny balls. I mean, that gives me a lot of hope. So this quote comes from Naomi Klein. Our fundamental task is to articulate not just an alternative set of policies, but an alternative worldview to rival the one that is at the heart of the ecological crisis, embedded in interdependence rather than hyper-individualism, reciprocity rather than dominance, and cooperation rather than hierarchy. So we've got to be unafraid to dream big, and while also doing the very pragmatic cost-benefit analysis, and also appealing to people's sense of fairness and compassion. And to have, I like to use the term, we have to find that sweet spot between we really got to do this. Gary, showed the slides about, people are suffering already because of climate change, and it's going to increase. But yet, so that's kind of the need that kind of pushes us. And the sweet spot is to find that positive vision that pulls us forward. And so I think both of these folks did a great job doing that. So let's go on to the next one. So, when we talk about, greening our churches, it's not enough to just, build solar panels. That's really great. But, we also have to think about, as Reverend Yadane, who I don't know if she's still here, but she did such a great job of articulating the intersection of all these issues. We hear about intersectional feminism. There's intersectional environmentalism. That the same companies that are creating, fueling climate change are also polluting people. The fact that the people that are most harmed by pollution and climate change are generally, disenfranchised, people of color, low income, people that are just throwaway, sacrificial communities, and it's not fair. So, and when we come up with solutions, we can't impose them. We have to listen to what works for people, what gets people excited, not assuming that let's all do this. They're like, wait a minute, we can't all do that. I can't do that. I don't have the money. I can't afford that. So we have to make sure that, we think about equity. And, speaking from a place of hope and not fear. I'm a nurse, so you can tell people, if you keep doing that, this is going to happen to you. And we hear that. We hear the scientists. We hear the terrible things that can happen. It is scary. We can feel despaired, and that can kind of have an effect of just kind of demotivating us. Like, why bother? We can't do anything. And also just making justice central to this whole cause, because if we had to do a quiz on all this, you might not be able to answer, the quiz and be like, well, let's see, what is distributed energy? A, B, you might not know that, but we got to remember why we're doing this. What is the motivation for why we're doing this? We don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to understand all of it. We have to come from a place of values. And we have to frame these issues from a moral and spiritual terms. And I skipped the other one. The changing our political system, which, correcting that imbalance between, the political power and the tax breaks, granted the polluting industries, the oil and gas industries, a wealthy member of societies, and revolting against a system that maximizes short-term profits over people and planet, and promoting this blind faith in a trickle-down economy, and then moralistically blaming, those who get left behind because, maybe they didn't work hard enough and there's something wrong with them. So next one. And of course, Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry, fits into that, when it, with one of I looked on the website, advocates for the fair and equal treatment of all persons, give voices to those who are being forgotten by our society. So when it comes to our climate scientists, they've been prophets about, warning us of the danger. They frame things in scientific language, and that is great, but it hasn't been enough to motivate people to change. So the faith community has the potential to put the human face on climate change and pollution, and frame our concerns and solutions out of profound sense that human life is sacred, creation is sacred. We're part of the web of life. We do the planet, we do it ourselves, and so that's where we need to come from. This is about the Bible Belt, and we have to connect with people on values. Next, please. So earth stewardship, that deep sense of gratitude and awe. We protect what we love. When we feel gratitude for what we have, we tend to be more generous. We tend to be more positive. We tend to be able to relate to other and all kinds of things. That interconnection with the natural world, other species, and each other. Kind of getting off of this whole big head trip of that humans are the apex of creation, and that realizing what we do, the planet, we do it ourselves, and when species are collapsing, we got to be concerned that we're next. And solidarity with vulnerable and marginalized communities, and realizing that having that, putting that E in environmentalism can stand for empathy. To have empathy for people that are suffering, because they're but by the will, the grace of God go I, and ending the suffering by pollution and climate change. As I said, the same forces driving climate change are also polluting the planet, polluting the water and the air we breathe. And then there's a case of just generational justice. What do we owe the children? I heard one teenager. She said, everybody always says, like, we have to think of our children. And she's like, what about my children? What about my grandchildren? And she's like 15. It just broke my heart to hear her say that. Next. And then this also broke my heart. Constant Okolet, who's a Ugandan climate change witness, she said, we are suffering the worst effects of climate change. It was not until I went to a meeting about climate change that I heard that it was not God, but the rich people in the West who are doing this to us. Yeah, doesn't that break your heart that someone would be, to be in that situation where, trying to feed themselves or family, wondering what the heck is going on. This has never been this way all my life. We've always had predictable weather, and now this is happening. And so we're asking them to stop or reduce their emissions. And so and this has been going on. This is nothing new, but the consumer lifestyle of the West, the 20% of us in the population are kind of ruining the planet. And this is nothing new, and it's easy. We can feel guilty about it. We have to understand that we've kind of been born into this system. It's like the air that we breathe. We take a lot for granted. As a result, we treat the earth as just a supplier, a grab bag of goods, and then also as a sewer for our waste. And environmental justice. So central to Ready for 100 is environmental justice and equity. We cannot be Tulsa Ready for 100. Send me my water, please. Without addressing this. So, basically this just means that all people and communities have a right to environmental protection under the law. Nothing about us, without us kind of thing. A right to live, work, and play in communities that are safe and healthy and free from life-threatening conditions and environmental hazards and health. So when we trash the planet, or when we trash neighborhoods, when we trash tribal lands, we trash people, and when we don't involve people in the decision makings about where polluting industries go, and instead of cater to the financial needs of those industries, it's abuse of people and power. And when we don't follow the lead of those who are most harmed in crafting solutions, we feed into the opportunism of other entities which stand to profit off of green gentrification and green energy. And so we can't be ready for 100 without making sure that those who are most vulnerable to climate change pollution and high costs of energy are the first to benefit from the transition to clean renewable energy. And for us to do that, we need a lot of voices. So all of you here today, we need you. We need people to recruit other people that have this kind of vision, because it can't take place around our kitchen tables. We have to be out in the community. We have to be talking to people and finding out what's important. Next, environmental justice and racism. So, basically, things that pollute are most likely going to be located in low-income neighborhoods and among communities of color. And as a result, these communities experience the health effects, the ill health effects, such as asthma, heart attacks, premature death, even diabetes. Kids that live next to highways have higher rates of diabetes, because in the end, most diseases are inflammation. Because when your bodies are assaulted by something like, this should not be in my body, your body's going to mount an immune response, and that's going to, because there's cellular damage taking place, there's inflammation, and then there's just, it's like a ripple effect. You can't breathe this stuff in, you can't drink this stuff in, you can't grow food in unhealthy soil and expect to be healthy. So not only does the presence of these kind of facilities in these poor neighborhoods hurt people's health, but it also drives down property values. It drives out other businesses. Kids who are sick because of air pollution and they have asthma, they miss out on school. How are they going to succeed? So not having clean air, clean soil, clean water blocks opportunities. It makes it harder for people to rise up out of poverty. Next. So the problems are all connected. So racism and all social injustice, climate change, economic inequality, and broken democracy. So, traditionally, I shouldn't, that's the wrong word, communities that have been historically disenfranchised, lacking in political and economic power and voice to ensure that decisions makers take their perspectives and needs into account, are harmed. And so an environmental justice approach in addressing climate change is embedded in social and racial justice, human rights, housing, and health equity. And it goes beyond fighting the problem of climate change and pollution to understanding how the abuse of the environment intersects with the oppression of people with the least power, including the poor, immigrants, women, and people of color. It's making sure that clean energy solutions promote equitable health benefits, job opportunities, and lower energy costs. Next slide. So this would just be an example. People of color bear a greater air pollution burden. So they're looking at something called PM 2.5, which is basically little particles of pollution, chemicals that are smaller than like 1/30 the size of a human hair. You breathe it in, it gets into your lungs, it gets into your bloodstreams, and it comes from hundreds of them. These little molecules come from power plants, cars, construction sites, fires, linked to all kinds of health disease. And unfortunately, in the last couple of years, PM 2.5 has risen. And as a result, we've had 10,000 additional premature deaths in this country because of the rise of air pollution. And that was after about, I think it's like a dozen or more years of pollution levels falling. And part of that came from, because we have more, wildfires. We were having some, this last week. And that's fueled by climate change. Some of it has to do with just more industries, economies booming, and also because less regulation by the EPA. So, and unfortunately, the committee that was charged with studying particulate matter they were all dismissed last year because they were coming up with evidence that, the amounts of PM2 were rising, and that actually that perhaps the levels that we have set for pollution are not strict enough. So that was not welcome news by the Emissions Permissions Agency, AKA, otherwise known as the EPA. Next. So this is a graph that I got this from the NAACP, and they looked at the top 10 states by African American population living within a half-mile radius of oil and gas facilities. Now this is from the 2010 census, but Oklahoma is, what is that, number 6, so 73,000, or 20% of the African American population of the state. So that's quite high, and living next to these facilities, pose, health risks to those who live nearby. On top, next please. So, and this is just Tulsa here. So this is from something that was put together by the Tulsa County and the Oklahoma City County, and they looked at just what they call negative land use, and showing by zip code. This is Tulsa. Some of these zip codes are on the west side, some are on the north side. I couldn't include all of them, but looking at the percentage of people that live within a half mile of industry, half mile of a highway, and quarter mile of a highway, and a quarter mile of an oil and gas site. And so certain zip codes, 74106, pretty high with the industrial land use. The oil and gas looks like 74126, that is also in North Tulsa. 74107, that's a West Tulsa. That's very highly industrialized area. I'm not going to read them all, but you can just see that there are certain communities that just live in neighborhoods where there's a lot of dirty stuff near them, and that's a disadvantage. Next. And so we talked about this double jeopardy, the double jeopardy of climate change and air pollution, that the same toxic facilities like coal and coal-fired power plants, refineries, incinerators that emit benzene, lead, mercury, and other contaminants in the water, food, and bodies of nearby communities. They also are emitting the greenhouse gases that are heating up our planet. Next, please. And really there's nowhere in our body that escapes the effects of pollution. And we're learning so much more now. We're learning that air pollution is associated with dementia, Alzheimer's, mental illness, diabetes, and the obvious ones: heart disease, lung disease, reduced lung cancer, and even learning disabilities. Recently, this week, I spoke to the school board about buses and using diesel fueled buses, and not, you never think about it, the iconic yellow school bus, but the levels of pollution in a school bus can be 5 to 15 times greater than, what is measured in a stationary air quality monitor, because of idling, kids sitting there waiting, the windows open, so it's like, whoa. But not only that, it's this, when you switch over to cleaner fuel buses, as happened in Georgia, 2,500 buses are now compressed natural gas. The kids riding those buses actually increased their scores in reading and math to the same degree that would have come if they had reduced class sizes. That's mind-blowing, because carbon monoxide, kind of dulls your brain, it's not what we're supposed to be breathing in. So next. And of course, Tulsa is one of the most challenging places to live if you have asthma, number 35 in the country. And here in Tulsa, between 2015 and 2017, the age-adjusted mortality rate for asthma per 100,000 was 5 times higher for African American residents than white counterparts. And part of it is exposure to the pollution, and part of it is living in maybe in a substandard housing. And energy efficiency. When you invest in energy efficiency in housing, you actually improve air quality in the house. But also, poverty, lack of insurance plays a major role in developing and managing asthma. So when you live below the poverty line, you lack health insurance, and you have asthma, it's a dangerous situation, and people do die. And in Tulsa, 74127 zip code has the highest rate of lung disease, and that's west and north. Next, please. And this is an area that I'm studying now. I should have put this in my biography, but I applied to be a fellow with the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, in part because the training was like near New York City where my son left, and now I got to do the study. I have to pay him back. I can't. And I'm really proud to do that because nurses are a very trusted profession, and we talk to people where they're at, and social justice is part of our code of ethics and making sure that people are treated equally and fairly. So this is a neighborhood that's over near the Holly Refinery on the west side. And people that live in oil refinery fence line zones experience multiple health hazards, in addition to just hoping that there's not going to be any catastrophe or excess emissions, explosions. People in these communities face a higher risk of cancer and respiratory hazards from toxic air pollution than other parts of our city and other. Next. So what I'm doing is I'm going and this is somewhere where I need help. And if you're not a shy person, it's really fun and it's interesting. We're knocking on doors and talking to people that live in the neighborhood. And what we're finding is that it's very striking. 89% don't like the way the air smells. And our sense of smell is meant to warn us. So something smells bad, that's a warning sign that something's not right. 62% are concerned with their health or the health of their family members. 44% limit their outdoor activities for themselves or their children. 44% experience eye, throat, and nose irritation, and 31% experience sometimes difficulty breathing or triggers their asthma attacks. And I think I have something else. Yeah, but that's terrible. We talked to somebody. She's like, we asked, what do you want the city to do for you? Do about this? And make the air smell good for us poor folks. That's heartbreaking. And consider this. This is Holly Refinery's corporate citizen page. We consider it a privilege to conduct business in communities where we operate and are committed to delivering sustainable economic, environmental, and social benefits to our neighbors, employees, and shareholders. So I'm not sure about that. Actually, I am. Let's go next. And as far as, I'm picking on Holly because just something I'm studying, but Holly Refinery is listed as a top 100 air toxic polluter in the country and a top 78 in water. So they come up with a score, and it's based on the toxicity of what they're releasing, how far it spreads, and the amount of people. And they also look at environmental justice scores in terms of poverty and race. And 42% of their air toxic score was here in Tulsa. And as for water, it was close to 100%. And a big portion of that is benzene, and benzene is linked to blood cancers. It's a neurotoxin, and it's a reproductive toxin too. And so winds in Tulsa oftentimes will blow towards the north and west, or east, I meant. And so there's folks that live up in Tulsa Heights, formerly, or maybe still to some, known as Brady Heights, and some of these neighbors complained to the DEQ. There's a hotline, and they complained enough that Holly representatives actually came to see them, and their response was that you need to worry more about gun violence than air pollution, which I felt was very racist and very disrespectful. And also, air pollution kills over 100,000 Americans every year, and gun violence, sadly, kills about 40,000. Neither figures are good, so it's not comparing apples to orange. So, next. So I'm also looking at Environmental Justice Index. So this is from the EPA Environmental Justice Mapping Tool, looking at the intersection of demographics, race, poverty, age, language with your exposures. So next. So just looking, for instance, this is Hawthorne Elementary, and you look at particulate matter, ozone, diesel, air toxic, cancer risks, respiratory hazards. And you see compared to the rest of the nation, this little area of town is like in the 80s and 90% worst areas because of the combination of vulnerability and exposure. And next one. And I can send a copy of this to anybody who needs it, just let me know. And this is Elliott. You look at that same compared to the other areas of the country, 38, 39, so, relative, below average, vulnerability and exposure. So next. So ready for 100, we envision a world powered by clean, renewable energy like, I'm going to turn around like I'm going to have a neck ache here. Like solar and wind, where all electricity, buildings, and transportation are efficient and pollution-free, where people live in healthy, clean environments, where communities most threatened by fossil fuels benefit first and most from the transition to clean, renewable energy, where individuals and communities have control over energy produced and consumed, where energy planning and decision-making is local and democratic, and where hundreds of thousands of good, clean energy jobs are helping families and communities to thrive. And next. And so, as I said, we cannot be ready for 100 without addressing equity. So creating quality careers for all people employed in the clean energy sectors. And there's something like 320 separate different job descriptions in the clean energy sector. Providing a just transition that protects the livelihoods and well-being of fossil fuel workers and communities by retraining people and preparing so the bottom just doesn't drop out. Ensuring equitable access to clean energy-related economic communities, opportunities for vulnerable communities. Providing affordable clean energy options, especially for members of vulnerable communities. And next. And so, Gary and Edith alluded to some of the benefits, and these are some of the health benefits. We're looking at, in Oklahoma, this is with Stanford again, that health cost per saving per year is over $5,000 per person. The number of lives lost is over 600. Energy savings, $655 in people's pockets. And the total cost between energy, health, and climate cost savings per person, $17,000. So it doesn't pay to pollute. It really costs all of us. And it will save all of us if we stop polluting so much. Next, please. Jobs created, 40-year jobs created. This is the number of jobs where a person could be employed for 40 consecutive years in construction, 46,000. Operation jobs, 20,000. So, we need those jobs. We need good paying jobs here in Oklahoma. We need those jobs in rural communities. We need them here in Tulsa. And next, please. And something to consider when we talk about equity and opportunity is that, the clean energy sector lacks, diversity. So it's pretty much dominated by older, white, male workers compared to other occupations. Fewer than 20% of workers in clean energy production and efficiency sectors are women, and while black workers account for less than 10%. So this means that, part of working here in the community with folks that are involved in education, racial justice, equal opportunities, making sure that our students are prepared for the jobs of the future, and every student, and that schools provide quality education to every child so that these jobs will be available to them. And next, and just looking at, for example, areas of town which need economic development. We've got a brownfield that was turned into the Peoria Mohawk Business Park. They need tenants. Now there's an expression, either turn brownfields into greenfields or bright fields. So this is from, this quote is from the Sustainable Tulsa, or the Sustainability Report. Tulsa and Clean Tech Tulsa has an opportunity to leverage its historic position as a leading region in production, manufacturing, and services related to the oil and gas sector cluster, become a leading region in the relation to clean energy and many of the other industries that compose the clean tech energy sector or industry sector. And next. So you can't read this, but this is just like the amazing amount of benefits of transitioning to clean energy. And we've talked about all of them: energy efficiency, improvements to health, improvements to our grid, our electricity system, rebooting our economy, and the benefits to societies, to health, in terms of illness and kids missing fewer days of school, consumers and businesses having more money to spend, new businesses and jobs. The list goes on. And next. So those who complain we can't do this, I love this. So what if it's a big house and we create this better world for nothing? Like, why bother? Like, energy independence, preserve the rainforest, sustainability, green jobs, livable cities, renewables, clean water, air, healthy children, etc. Yeah, and next. And so I just want to, just in closing here, just to keep in mind that no problems exist in isolation, and solutions neither. But our actions can have ripple effects. But above and beyond what we can do as individuals to reduce our carbon footprint and waste, we have to recognize that the power of the individual to mitigate environmental harm is really severely constrained by physical, social contexts, industrial infrastructure, how we generate energy, how we produce goods, how we grow and transport food, how the built environment that encourages urban sprawl, more cars, less transportation. So, we can do what we can to, as individuals, and that can inspire others. And in fact, starting there is a good place because it kind of gets you primed up to do the bigger work, which is, addressing, talking to your friends, talking to the faith community like we're doing tonight, organizations, voting, working for campaigns, And it's harder. I mean, some of us, we were talking, it's harder sometimes to change systems, to look at this long term, this campaign that can take years, and, we have to build relationships and networks, and we build them and then they fall apart. It's disappointing, it's hard, but we got to keep plugging. It can be a lot easier to just perform, acts of charity because we get that immediate reward, but we have to remember why we're doing this. And we're trying to help people, we're trying to save people's lives, we're trying to protect the future, and we're trying to show appreciation for our home planet, and that we are from it. And so it's about changing our culture. So that's why tonight, after I'm done here, we're going to engage in dialogue with each other about our shared values and our connection to Tulsa, where we can shift away from ideological differences and form a community-led, grassroots-led campaign like Tulsa Ready for 100, which will provide benefits not somewhere far away or somewhere in the future, but we can feel the effects in our community right now. So finally, so even if I knew that tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree. So there's a rabbinical story that says, if you hear a rumor that the Messiah is coming tomorrow, plant your tree anyway and see what happens. So I love that because, the future is created by those who get involved, and the answer is not false hopelessness or learned helplessness. It's not cynicism. It's dreaming big. It's thinking big, and that's what you're all here for. Because I'm one person, and we're all responsible for our own behaviors, our own actions. We all can make a difference, and I hope that we can do that together. And thank you.